flexibility, we have more depth, we have more guys pulling the rope in the right direction, so starting to see some success.
It's a special year, and I think our guys deserve to have the chips pushed all in.
It was nice when our management goes all in and it puts pressure on our team, and we like pressure.
Winning's tough, and if you think you have a group that could possibly do it, you go all in.
Welcome to the Mile High Hockey Lab.
Yes, hello and welcome to the Mile High Hockey Lab. On this special 60th episode, our second playoff edition of the 2023-24 season. Thank you folks so much for joining us here in the Mile High Hockey Lab. So far, I am with Ezra Parter and Jackie K. I do believe that Mr. Managing Editor Evan will be joining us momentarily. So without further ado, thank you folks so much for watching our program. Please head on over to YouTube, like, subscribe, and turn on your alerts so you know every single time that we are live. And also check out our extensive catalog on Apple Podcasts and Spotify as we've been chronologically following this Avalanche team as we reintroduce the intro, but we'll scratch that real quick. But it's been a fun playoffs already as is. And, you know, us over at milehighhockey.com, we got to check in on you as the playoffs progress. We are 2 games deep with the Colorado Avalanche in a 1-1 series tie with the Winnipeg Jets. Ezra, I will start with you, my friend. It's been an entertaining playoff so far, especially if you're a Colorado Avalanche fan. As I mentioned, we're tied in a 1-1 affair with the Winnipeg Jets. How confident are you heading into Game 3?
Well, you know, I predicted for my bold predictions for the week that the Avs would go 2-0 in Winnipeg, and the Skaters did. You know, the Skaters outplayed Winnipeg 2 games in a row. I feel great about the Skaters. Obviously, the game 1 didn't go Georgiev's way, but Game 2 he bounced back in a major way, so that's awesome. I think there's a lot of reason for optimism going into Game 3, but there's also always the question mark of Georgiev. What version of him are we going to get? We don't know till we start the game, and even then, we don't know till after the first goal. Usually, if he reacts to the first goal pretty well, he bounces back and plays well, then I think the team does well. And if he reacts to the first goal poorly, then you know the ship is off its moorings. But we'll see.
I was going to say you pretty much give me the answer to the question that I'm about to give to Jackie.
Oh, sorry.
I'm reading between the lines. No, just in terms of your point of view. But I'm reading between the lines and thinking that you don't feel like there's necessarily an apology to be made just yet. Jackie, what do you feel? Do you feel like us folks owe Alexander Georgiev an apology after his Game 2 performance?
Well, the people that were being incredibly nasty and saying he should never play another game in Colorado, sure, those people need to give an apology. Yeah. But you know, that's just not great behavior anyway, regardless. But yeah, to those people that were overreacting, sure. But there's still legitimate concern, and one game isn't going to erase all that. Like, right. If we're in the Cup Finals and he's in the Conn Smythe discussion, then yes, absolutely, he deserves an apology. But, you know, one good game is great, but that doesn't really change anything. Like, I don't change my opinion on this team based on, like, one game or one period or one play. So you got to do a lot more to change my mind.
Okay. So you're still kind of on the fence, because I asked Ezra how confident he is heading into Game 3. That same question to you. How do you feel, Jackie?
Well, this team's always done well at home, so I think that's definitely going to give a boost and definitely going to add to the optimism. I don't know yet that we've really found the pulse of this series yet. I think Game 1 was just so bizarre. I don't know that you could really take it as an indication either way. It was just so strange. Game 2 was more normal, I guess you could say. So it was nice that the Avs dug out of it and then solidified the win and everything. So I think that makes you feel good heading into this part of the series. But I still think it's really up in the air, personally. It could be a long series. That's kind of what I'm feeling. We haven't had an overtime game yet. I know that's coming. Yeah. So I'd say cautiously optimistic, but there's still a lot yet to be known.
Yeah, and we got Brandon Vogt commenting on my hat because I'm usually wearing a CU Boulder hat. So yeah, go Nuggets tonight. But yeah, Jackie, I'm kind of with you. I said the same thing after game 1 as I will after game 2, which is recalling the very famous Adam Sandler Happy Gilmore gif of that kind gentleman singing "We've Only Just Begun," because this series really, as you mentioned, game 1's kind of just a throwaway game. Game 2 felt a little bit more normalized, but the biggest thing for me is both goaltenders have been not good, and that's way more surprising from Winnipeg for basically the guy who's been touted as a shoo-in for the Vezina, and I'm not arguing. I think he is. But Ezra, what are your thoughts on Hellebuck, and do you think his struggles are bound to continue, or are you not counting on it?
Well, I think identifying him as a guy who's struggling makes sense because his save percentage is down from where you'd expect it to be. But I also think the Avalanche are just playing so well that some of his numbers are inevitable because of the guys on the ice playing against him. It's just the way that Colorado has dominated play and created chances has been really impressive. And it's we talked about whether or not the Avalanche would be able to turn it on in the playoffs. And I think so far the answer to that question is absolutely they flipped a switch. Cale Makar's looked incredible. Nathan MacKinnon, even without putting up a ton of points in game 2, dominated his ice time. I just think that Hellebuck's struggles are really a product of Colorado playing well in a way that Georgiev's struggles were not a product of Winnipeg playing particularly well. So for me, I think it's reasonable to say that Hellebuck's relative struggles will continue because Colorado will continue to play this well. But it's also true that Hellebuck is capable of stealing a game, and regardless of who Colorado is, he can shut the door. And I think we will see that at some point in this series. He will put up a 950 save percentage someday, and it's going to be a tough game. But that doesn't necessarily mean Colorado will lose because the way they're playing right now, they're not giving Winnipeg anything.
Well, and that might be the overtime game Jackie is speaking of, is one of those really low-scoring games where the Avs are controlling play, but Hellebuck's on his head. And I gotta agree with you, Ezra. Like you mentioned right off the top, the skaters have had great games in both games 1 and game 2. Obviously, guys like Manson, he had a couple of plays in the game 1 that showed up on the scoreboard in a bad way, and I think it's hard to get past some of those mistakes that the Avs made. I mean, anytime you give up 6 goals, it's a problem. But when you look at the shots on goal and kind of some of the opportunities more in depth, you get a firm understanding of the Avs were basically 2 saves short of a game 1 victory as well. So I'm in the same camp as you. I think they have flipped a switch. I think you see that mostly on the forecheck, and I think what's going to be crucial in this series, just picking up off of game 2, is the Avalanche establishing a lead. Because if the Avs can get into that mode where they're rolling lines and they're pesky on the forecheck, not allowing anyone to make any moves or passes in the neutral zone, they become a damn near impossible team to beat with the lead. So I think that's crucial. We saw it in game 6 in the Stanley Cup final a couple years ago. Game 2, a couple nights ago, reminded me a lot of game 6 in that the Avs got that 4-2 lead. It felt like, oh, here comes that third period. The Jets are one of the best third period goal differential teams in the league. We should be in for something. And I even think the national broadcasters were almost egging on a response from the Jets, obviously because it's their job to entertain us. But I'm with you, Ezra. I think that the switch has been flipped. But Jackie, what about you? Are you seeing any standout performers, maybe positively or negatively?
You touched on Makar. I think he's found another level. Obviously, I think Lehkonen. Makar is leading the team with 5 points, and Lehkonen has 4.
Yeah.
So, I think he's stepped up as well. So, I'm not as favorable to that. Oh, they almost won game 1. I'm not in that boat. It was a lot of score effects there in the third period. Let's be honest. I do like that they've won the special teams battle. That was one of my keys to this series. So obviously, Makar and Lehkonen contributing on the power play, that has definitely helped them on the scoreboard. So I'd say those two for me.
Okay. Yeah, I think I was like super hopeful as we talked about in the build up to this series about certain guys being more suited towards the style of the playoffs. And I do think we've seen that a little bit from Josh Manson and Miles Wood and Ross Colton and some of the people we've talked about. I don't know that we've necessarily seen it from Georgiev, although I'll say when you are suppressing shots like the Avs are, it should be suited towards at least a more consistent performance from Georgiev, which I think is the biggest struggle for Avs fans and why I don't necessarily like you mentioned, Jackie. Those who got vile, they owe him an apology. But the people who looked at that stat line and said you gave up 4 goals on 10 shots, you made 6 saves. That's impossible to ignore. And it's a red flag of all red flags. So to see Georgiev kind of lean on his teammates, and he was even vocal about that after the game, that his teammates were crucial in the kind of days between game 1 and 2. And he even talked about changing his pregame routine, working in some visualization. It felt almost like he was watching the Denver Nuggets play the Lakers and saw what Jamal Murray did in the fourth quarter for the Nuggets and was like, yeah, maybe we can just make that contagious at Ball Arena and be a team. And I do think you got to kind of give fans credit, not the vile ones, but by kind of going after Georgiev, you saw the team galvanize around him and each other. So I think as pesky as we can be and as kind of, I guess, annoying for lack of a better term as diehard fans, like we press things and sometimes right or wrong, it can result in a good outcome. Obviously, I can't give all the credit to the fans because the guys have to go play, but I do think it kind of led to a shift in the mind frame for the team as a whole, where it was kind of like maybe a little bit fragmented. That was not the case in game 2. So I'm excited as a Colorado Avalanche fan heading back to Ball Arena for game 3, which we heard so much about the greatest tradition in sports, quote unquote, which is the whiteout in Winnipeg. So I guess it's just our turn at Ball Arena to do what we do and be nice and loud. So there's a challenge to you folks, but let's move on to our next topic. Folks, thank you so much for joining us. I think right now we have just about 150 live viewers, 128 live viewers, excuse me. So thank you folks very much for tuning in. If you enjoy this programming, please head on over to milehighhockey.com. We have lots and lots of fun stuff. We got recaps, pre-games, anything you could possibly think of Avs related. We've probably talked about it or written about it. So head on over there when you get the chance. But Jackie, I want to talk about potential lineup changes heading into game 3. It feels like Sam Girard is kind of on the precipice of his return, and we've seen some action in terms of call-ups. I haven't really looked at the news today, so maybe you can update me. How are we feeling about Sam Girard's return and potentially Kovalenko's debut?
I don't believe there was much news today, so I don't think you missed any transactions. Okay. Unfortunately, I don't think the Eagles meant much for the Avs. It just meant they were home. The Eagles are playing their play-in series. I refuse to call it a playoff series. It's a play-in series. They had game 1 last night, and they unfortunately lost. It's a best of 3, so, you're already kind of behind the 8 ball. At least they're at home, though. So the Avs returned from Winnipeg yesterday morning. So those players, Brad Hunt, Chris Wagner, and Ivan Prospatov, were available. All 3 of them played last night. So with the Avs at home through this weekend, they're not going to call anybody up as extras to sit around. They're going to call somebody up as needed. But those Hunt and Wagner weren't needed because Jones and Kivi Ranta played. Right. So that doesn't even mean that Girard's back or not, because if he's not, they'll just play Caleb Jones. Mm-hmm. So we really don't know yet. If any of them are called up while the Avs are at home, that's a little bit more curious. But like I said, they already have their sort of level 1 reinforcements. So they need to get to like level 2 before we start looking at those players. The Prospatov thing might be up in the air because if Annunen can at least back up, which he did practice today, so yes, that's indicating he could probably at least back up. So they'd rather have Prospatov play for the Eagles because their game 2 is Friday night, tomorrow night as well. So as far as Gerard, he practiced again, but we're kind of in this, it's hard to really read the tea leaves on this because usually progression through concussion protocol is very step-by-step. Once you reach the full contact practice with the team, you're usually ready to go. So he hasn't been ready to go. So that's a little bit concerning because that means that it's not just a 1, 2, 3, 4 process. Yet he's still out there, so he's feeling well enough to continue to be on the ice, but something is preventing him from being able to play, and that's a concern.
Yeah, that's a good point. Because you would think, I mean, this time of year, if guys can go, they go. And that's not to say like we make light of injuries or head injuries in particular, but I know we all know that's kind of what makes this time of year a little bit more high risk and high stakes, is that guys play through things and they see the ill effects of it later because they're willing to put their body on the line to fulfill their ultimate dream, which I don't think I can blame them. So it's something that I guess we'll have to keep an eye on with Gerard. I do think that when he comes back to the lineup, we'll see a different form of the Avalanche that I think maybe the entire hockey world is kind of overlooking. Obviously Gerard's not going to make this huge needle moving difference, but it does, I think, on the back end, which is where he's been best this year. So I guess I should say just defensively, it's where he's been best this year. And that's kind of where the Avs struggled in game 1. And hopefully we can see that continue to be cleaned up here in game 3. But Ezra, so it's not Kovalenko time. And as we are told, Brennan is as well as chiming in. I think he was probably at skate today. And he does also say that Juice is on the bench. So that means you're correct, Jackie Prosvetov will go in that next playoff play-in, as you called it. But Ezra, tell me what you think so far of the guys who have filled in, like Caleb Jones and Yoki Viranta.
Yeah, well, I mean, Kiviranta's been a standout for me. He's been so good. The third line has been incredible. I put in my game recap from game 2 that Kiviranta led the team in every underlying statistical category. Wow. It was I'd never seen him play that well on paper. And then the eye test, he also looked great. Mm-hmm. He's making things happen. He's not very good with his stick. We all know that. He can't finish. He seems to like fumble his way into assists rather than actually make nice passes. But he's going to the right areas. He's playing hard. He's playing well. And the stick stuff, whatever, it's all working out. So I don't expect that third line to churn out points. So it's okay for him to not necessarily have the finish of somebody up in the lineup, or even a Kovalenko potentially, which we haven't seen at the NHL level, obviously. But the way he's using what he does bring is incredible. I'm so impressed with him. And that third line as a whole has been, I would say, the key to the Avalanche winning. Obviously, Cale Makar being excellent is crucial, and Georgiev turning things around in game 2. Those are huge factors. But without the third line producing in 2 games in a row, I mean, I just feel like those guys, their effort and their work rate and their ability to find some finish really, really, really was a key to this team being competitive in both games. Jones, on the other hand, haven't really liked him a lot. I liked him in the regular season quite a bit. I think it's not fair to him to have him sit all season and then expect him to perform in the playoffs. Yeah. That's an unrealistic expectation. I wish he could have gotten some more games down the stretch just for this purpose. But obviously, when everybody's healthy, what are you going to do? You're not going to just sit somebody. Mm-hmm. So they did that a little bit with Jack Johnson, but mostly to get Sam Malinsky games. So, it's too bad for Jones. I do think he has the skill set to fit in the system, and we've seen him be good in the regular season. So I think, his third game in a row, if he does end up playing tomorrow, he'll probably be a little bit better. I do believe in him. I just haven't liked what I've seen so far, and neither has Bednar. He only skated 9:57, I think, in the second game, and he picked up a penalty in that too, which I will say, bad call. Yeah, that was. He didn't trip that guy. He didn't trip Lowry. Lowry went down on his own, but whatever. From the ref's angle, I get it. So we'll see. And as far as Gerard goes, I mean, we'll know if he's able to go tomorrow. If he's participated in morning skate every game, but he hasn't been participating in power play. He hasn't been wearing a power play jersey in practice. So if he's participating in power play drills, sorry, that's only happens in practice. I got my signal.
No, you're right. They
wear the jerseys in warm-ups as well.
In morning
skate.
They usually just practice power play morning skate. So yeah, they wear the power play 1 and 2 jerseys. So no, you were on the right track.
I was right. Okay, great.
Yeah.
I love being right. Okay. If he's wearing a power play jersey in morning skate tomorrow, then we'll know that he's good to go. And if he's not, then he's not playing, which is concerning for sure, like we've said.
That's a really good barometer and insight. So we'll keep an eye on that. That's kind of why I brought him to the table, because I have seen him in the photographs and stuff of today's practice. So like you said, it's kind of an eerie situation, kind of similar to what's going on with Willie Nylander over in Toronto, with him participating in practices and skates, but not the game. So, and they've come out and said that he's dealing with intense migraines, as it's been labeled. So as a result of concussion. So I'm hoping that it's not like lingering effects of concussion, but it just kind of feels like that based on the similar characteristics. I don't want to, I guess, I don't have any insight. That's just kind of me connecting the dots. But I guess, like we said, we'll keep an eye on what jersey he's wearing in line rushes and in the morning skates to see just if he may be coming back. But I want to open the floor a little bit to the two of you and see if there's anything that I haven't touched on that you two might want to talk about. The floor is yours.
Okay, I guess I'll one last thing on Gerard. He usually is on power play too, but I'm not 100% sure he would be immediately back on it, just because if they're happy with the 2 units and they have enough forwards to spread around. But I do like the theory that if he's wearing a different colored jersey, it's going to be a good sign. But
yeah,
I have a feeling they might sneak him in, though. I'm just saying that too.
Yeah.
If he's just wearing
the
black jersey, I don't think it's 100% no. But anyway, I also wanted to touch on Kovalenko myself. I think we're still all very excited to see him, but I've just had a bad feeling about this since the beginning. I really don't think they intend to call him up. Now, if we get deep into the playoffs, lots of injuries, they're going to have to use guys. Then he's on the table, but I don't think there's any intention for it. They don't see him as part of the team, so he's not on the team, and he's not going to play for the team. And I think that's kind of where we're at right now with that.
Is there anything that can happen? Because we saw Brandon Duhaime, he played 5 whole minutes and spent 4 minutes in the penalty box. I know that he was brought in for a purpose. He's a PK guy, and that's valuable, and you can't really replace that. And we don't really know that about Kovalenko necessarily. But at the same time, those are the kind of mistakes that you can't make with limited ice time. And if you're going to just make yourself irrelevant and basically play 3 minutes a night, what's the point of even having that guy in the lineup? You might as well bring someone like Kovalenko up just to find out. Do you guys feel like there's any possibility of that? Or is that just, like you mentioned, Jackie, he's not on the team yet?
I don't see it because, like I said, they think of the team as very much like a complete unit. You're on the bus and you're on the team.
Okay.
And if you're not on the bus, you're not on the team. So
Gotcha.
There's no well, maybe we'll try this guy or that guy. Bednar's very much this is my best hand and I'm going to continue to play it. And so the trust factor, and I know in some of the newer guys, the trust factor might not be quite as high. But they were brought in as rentals. They made a deal for this guy. He's a NHL veteran. He's not coming out of the lineup. Bednar just doesn't do that. It's kind of ranked. They're ranked as these are my guys, and he's gonna roll with them. So I'd be very surprised to see somebody come out of the lineup just to mix things up, or because he doesn't like what he's seeing. He'll just reduce their ice time, like you mentioned, but he's not going to take him out of the lineup.
Yeah. And I mean, if he was lighting up the AHL playoffs right now, or play-in, excuse me, then maybe there'd be a different conversation around it. But he didn't put up any points. I don't know how much ice he played. I don't have good AHL stats in front of me, but I know he didn't score. He ended up a -1, which plus minus is what it is, but he certainly isn't making a huge difference for the Eagles right now. So it's hard to see him as an immediate fill-in for the Avalanche as a difference maker ahead of somebody who's making a difference on his own, like Kiviranta, who I think his roster spot might be the question mark.
Well, time on ice isn't made public, so there's no stats. That stats are very bare bones on purpose. Well, Kovalenko did have a goal and an assist in basically their game 82, which they had to win for home ice for this play-in. So it was an important game.
That's true.
And nobody lights it up on that team. Nobody has ever lit it up on that team. So if that's the expectation, then they're all they're all never going to make it because it's not a team that scores like that. It's not built that way. It's not built for offense. It's just very sporadic. You have guys like Burke and Cedric Pare and all these other dudes that score here and there. It's just, what they need to see from Kovalenko is just up to game speed. I think he's played 5 games now in a week. I think he's there.
I guess I just meant like if he was demanding NHL time with his play, then he maybe would be more of a shot for it, but it doesn't seem like that's happened yet.
I think that's fair.
I never expected that. Like you just can never expect anybody in this team. Like Malinsky hasn't blown the doors off, and
that's true.
He looks like he's all right up there. He probably will be up there more and more, hopefully.
Exactly. I mean, he does okay, but he had a big sort of, I don't know, maybe you could call it a lull or whatever, but it just happens. Like it happens to every single player on that team.
Yeah. But then the other factor for Kovalenko is like we said, like who's he going to replace, and there really isn't an obvious candidate. I mean, the lineup, the skaters are playing so well right now that I don't think there's anybody who needs to come out. You could maybe say Brandon Duhaime, but he brings an edge that Kovalenko probably does bring too, it seems like from what I've seen of him. But Duhaime's proven that he can be an agitator at the NHL level. So
yeah.
I mean, for me, it'd probably be Kiviranta, which I know we all discussed that he's had a good start, but I don't know how much longer that's going to last.
That's fair. Yeah. But like you said, though, he's not going to lose his job because he might have a bad game. He'll lose his job after he has a bad game. So
they're just going to need another injury. I mean, knock on wood, not that we want another injury,
of course.
It's just that's the way the hierarchy works.
Yeah, and I like if that's the way it is, I'd rather not find out. I'd rather wait until next time. Yeah, so that's good insight on the Kovalenko situation. Ezra, what about you? You got anything you want to bring to the floor?
Well, I mean, we talked a little bit about Manson's struggles in game 1. I think it was clear that he was making some relatively boneheaded plays. There's no way to look at those and say anything else. I'm excited to see Gerard back in the lineup to hopefully Friday, but if not, whenever he's able to come back to kind of settle things down. But I did think Manson did a good job of bouncing back in game 2. And it's nice to see the usage there on the back end. They've broken up Taves and Makar and gone, for the most part, Walker, Makar, and then Taves and Manson. And that's pretty interesting. What do you guys think about that?
I like it. I worry about Walker with Makar a little bit because we saw Sean not necessarily have a hard time, but I think it's more about with those minutes, him having a hard time. We saw him kind of lose his legs in certain frames, a time where I'm like, that's just because he's not used to that sort of role. So I like it in terms of spreading the wealth of Devon Taves and Cale Makar. I don't think it's a long-term solve to not having Gerard, because then what inevitably happens is you have Caleb Jones playing 9 minutes and the other 5 guys are kind of making up that difference in time. So I think inevitably you want to get back to that Makar and Taves. But I think for the time being, you pair up Makar, who's the prototype for the style of play from a defender for the Colorado Avalanche, with the guy who's come in and has looked really, really good inside of that system. I'm here for it. I want it to kind of I guess where it'll really count for me is if it shows up on the score sheet.
Sure.
And until it does, I'm going to think that maybe they're probably better off having the Canada's best D pair together all the time. But that's just it's kind of, you got to make choices when you're missing a guy.
I wish that they had mixed it up more just throughout the season. I think to me, that was part of their competitive advantage, and they kind of got away from it this year. They didn't do it as much, which was always a head scratcher to me because it's just something so unique to what they can do with their defensemen, and then they stopped doing it. So I don't really get that. I think with Manson, he's been very high risk. So the highs have been highs, the lows have been lows. I think that's part of him really pushing offense and pushing that style, which, like I said, the rewards are great, the downsides are not. So I don't know if he can really keep continuing that. I don't know if that's really what they need out of him on a nightly basis. I mean, it's like fun when it happens, and you score on a breakaway goal, that's awesome. I mean, that's cool. You're coming out of the box and
that was
score.
Cool. That was really funny.
but like, I don't necessarily want to see him leading in shots. I just don't think that's like a long-term recipe for success. We know the Avs like all their D jumping in and being part of the offense and the 5-man attack and all that, and I totally agree with that, but it's also why they've had some ugly defensive breakdowns that has been kind of a problem in the whole season, and was a big problem in game 1. And so I don't know. They still need to find a balance there. It's like they have to be a little bit smarter about it. So that's how I feel about the defense right now.
It's a true live by the sword, die by the sword maneuver that they're kind of pulling right now, which we see the worst case scenario in game 1, and we see kind of the best case scenario in game 2. So I think you're right about that, Jackie. But we are joined now by Mr. Managing Editor Evan. Thank you so much, and Evan's cat, as usual, right on cue. But I kind of want to, we just talked about like living by the sword and dying by the sword, and kind of, my topic that wasn't in the script that I want to bring to the floor is specific in terms of the goaltending. To me, it feels like Georgiev is having a hard time with his glove. And in the opposite end of the ice, it feels like Hellebuck is having a hard time with his 5-hole. I mean, we see Josh Manson go 5-hole on a breakaway on the Vezina Trophy winner. Like that's kind of an eye-opener to me. Is there something to that, or is it just kind of just how things are shaking out?
It's a good question, because goaltending, I think, is kind of going to be the make or break of this series, right? We talked about it a whole bunch, just coming up, and mostly on the Avalanche side than anything, right? Not so much on the Jet side, because Connor Hellebuck is Connor Hellebuck. In these first 2 games, Hellebuck has given up more goals than Georgiev has, as crazy as that is to say.
We're talking about it now.
That's... I'd be pretty nervous if I'm a Winnipeg fan, especially for that instance. It's good that the Avs have shown that Connor Hellebuck is human, and the last time that I can think that they've done something similar-ish to what they're doing now is the Stanley Cup final in 2022, when Vasilevsky was also finding difficulty with his 5-hole in particular. I think when Nichushkin beat him, in game 1 early in that first period. And everyone was kind of stunned by that, I think. So it's good. I think that Connor Hellebuck does look beatable. It's more so just about, can Georgiev kind of shape up to be a little bit better. And we saw that during game 2, particularly. Much, much better performance from him. But I got to admit, I still question if he is in net for game 3 and 4 down the line. And I just say that because now Anderson might be better, or better being like not ill anymore. Right. And do you run that risk, I guess, if you're Jared Bednar? Because one good game is not going to erase everything bad that happened, before that. So it's going to be interesting to see, at least on that side of things where they go. I doubt that the Jets change from Connor Hellebuck,
No.
unless something crazy happens. So expect the Avs to still kind of attack where Winnipeg is vulnerable, and that is Hellebuck's 5-hole.
Yeah, and I just mentioned it because it does seem to be like Miles Wood's goal off the draw went 5-hole as well. And then for Georgiev on his side of things, we see him fighting those glove saves where it's like he should be catching a lot of the ones that he's batting down and they're becoming rebounds. Ezra, I see you nodding your head. What are your thoughts on Georgiev's glove?
Yeah, I think we noticed it definitely in the first game, and then in the first period of the second game, I think we saw that. But then I feel like after the Scheifele goal in the second period, which had nothing to do with his glove, there was no Georgiev was not at fault for that.
Good luck.
That was crazy.
Yeah.
That was an incredible goal. Like,
so cool.
Yeah. If I was a Jets fan, that would be a poster on my wall. That was incredible. But I think Georgiev really dialed in. I mean, we saw a much better version of him from the rest of that game. He was making glove saves. He was making them look easy. I don't think he ever was really like. There was one save, 1-on-1 versus I think it was Velarde or Ehlers in the slot that was like truly impressive. The rest of it was all just like being square to shots, but that's what we didn't see from him in the first game. So that's great. I think his glove settled down when he settled down. So I think it's all mental with him. And once he got dialed in and was playing well, the glove stuff was working just fine.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because like you look at the first goal and it was like he scrambled. You could tell he came way out and he was like, "Oh crap, I'm way out of position and I know it." And then that second goal, like you said, I don't care who you are. Like that's probably not getting saved. Even Bobrovsky spinning around in a circle couldn't stop that one if he tried. But I like a lot of what I saw from Georgiev in the second half of that game in terms of confidence, and like if he can build off of that, if he can start like truly rolling as a goaltender, the Avs are gonna scare some people because we clearly see they're not having any issues scoring against what was touted as the best defensive team in the league with the best goalie. So. I mean, if the Avs have a chance and they find a way to get past this round to likely play, as we'll talk about in our next segment, Vegas, who's up 2-0 right now with 2 road victories, like that's going to be a heck of a series. I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, but let's move into that. I want to talk a little bit about our reaction to the Las Vegas Golden Knights and Mark Stone having his hands and fingerprints on a lot of their points. Are you guys like of the camp that's upset about their cap circumvention, or is this just a part of the business and everybody else has got to get over it?
Hey,
I felt that the people that could make a difference to complain about it don't. So it's more something that upsets the fans than it upsets the other NHL GMs and the players in particular. It's a rule, and if you don't take advantage of it, it's on you. It's kind of how I feel about it. I mean, it's definitely eye-rolling. It's been 3 years in a row. Like, we know this is going to happen. Is it favorable timing? I mean, we see other guys, that aren't quite ready. I don't think Sergachev's playing for Tampa, Sometimes it can just work out that way, but it definitely seems like a willingness on certain players' part to play along, I think, as well.
Yes, ma'am.
Certain player.
Yes, ma'am.
So are they just lucky that they have a player that's willing to aid in their game? I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, I just don't see the Avs ever taking advantage of it this way. I don't know, because they'd rather have the player for sure than have his replacement for sure. It's kind of how the Avs look at it.
It's all fun and games until they actually do miss the playoffs playing this little shenanigan, because there will be a time where that happens. And I think that's kind of like what other GMs are counting on, is they're like, yeah, it's worked for you guys a couple of times.
Well, that's true. I mean, they were the last wild card. They
Mhm.
missed 2 years ago, so
It's like
it's
you're paying
true.
a
And
guy a lot to sit out the last 2 months of the season, and then you miss the playoffs. Then that becomes an issue.
It's certainly frustrating. I think more so, at least personally, on my end, from an Avs perspective, when a Vegas fan comes into our replies and says, "Oh, but you're doing the exact same thing."
yeah, with
No,
Landeskog
we're
wasn't played
not.
in 2 years.
Landeskog hasn't played in 2 years, and we have no idea if he's ever going to play again, for that matter.
I wish he was playing along and he came back. I wish so bad.
I know. We all would have wished. We all would have wished he'd magically walk down the tunnel in Game 1. No, that was never going to happen. If he plays, the Avs basically have to make the Stanley Cup final this year. Right? Like I think that's the more annoying thing out of this. But on the flip side of this, with Vegas being up 2-0 against the Stars, it's a great opportunity for them to win, obviously, on home ice and try and go for the sweep. But more importantly, too, if the Avs do take advantage of these next 3 games at home, next 3 out of the next 5 games at home, that then you have a great chance of winning, the series against the Jets. And then on top of that, you would have home ice advantage against the Vegas Golden Knights. So as bad as it sounds right now, I am rooting for Vegas so that can happen if the Avs do win the series against the Jets, because the Avs would benefit so well from playing on home ice in that series, rather than going to Vegas 4 times out of the 7 times they play.
Well, and you look at the bottom of the West in the Western bracket with Vancouver and Nashville, they're tied at 1, and Edmonton and LA tied at 1, with LA getting the overtime win. So again, we don't really know too much or enough to be calling any of these series, but if it could very well shake out that the Avs have home ice the rest of the way, if they're so fortunate as to keep winning and stringing along wins, which would be a feather in the cap of Jared Bednar, who just kept telling us that he wasn't going to empty the gas tank to win home ice. So I guess this is kind of why that might work out. And we got Peterman said 2 Avs were in the assistance program. They got a lot of rest. Not saying they did anything wrong, but there are other ways around the cap. I don't think
they never spent that money though.
That money never got used, and here they are, and they didn't stay in the assistance program longer than required, obviously. So
it would have been Nichushkin staying in until the playoffs and then spending his money at the deadline, which they did not.
And then
he should have, but they definitely did.
And then he says Parise counted less than full AV because he started late. Well, that's because he took his time on deciding who he was going to choose. As we've been told, he had a couple of different teams on the docket, so he chose the Avalanche, probably waiting to see where they were kind of lined up in the playoff race and everything. So
was it less AAV? It was less real money to him, but I don't know if it was less AAV.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
He still counts fully against the cap.
Oh, he does? Okay, then there you go.
Yeah. But also,
Peter, thank you for
Vegas
the program.
Yes, thank you, Peter. We're not trying to tell you you're wrong, but we're unfortunately wrong. I'm glad you're here.
Yes.
But on the Vegas thing, I mean, they're literally like 1 player over the cap, even with Mark Stone back. So I don't know that it's that big a deal. Robin Leonard's still on LTIR, so they still had money to play with. It's not that big a deal. I think I read some article that was like all they would have to do is send if they had to be under the cap for these playoff games, all they would have to do is send their backup goalie Aiden Hill to the minors. There's not much going on here.
But it's true that every team is sort of manipulating in some way, and so the Avs are no different. So I think that's what Peter's trying to get at. We're all kind of seeing some manipulation, and I agree with that. And so that's why I'm kind of like on the fence about this. Like I definitely agree it's annoying, but is it really a problem? I'm not quite there.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you. It's just a part of the game, and like I said, it's worked out for them so far, but it doesn't always work out that way. That they're playing with fire in their own way too, especially if they're letting a guy just shut it down because they want him to and he wants to. Like that's a dangerous game. Like you're paying this dude for starts. But moving on a little bit, are there any other games, I guess, or series around the league that have kind of caught your eye? The one that stuck out to me, which I guess it maybe shouldn't as much based on Florida being the number one team, but that Florida and Tampa series, Florida seems to be pretty sure-handedly taking care of the Lightning. What do you guys think of that?
I think Florida's probably going to win the Cup. They're my pick.
Okay.
So doesn't surprise me. I think they had an excellent year. I think especially them going to the finals last year, maybe they weren't quite ready for that, but they did. And now I think their team's better. So it just really seems like an arc to me that leads to winning. And the games have been close. They were both 3-2, so not like dominating wins or anything, but like those are the wins you need. So I think that they've really shown their championship medal, if you could say, with what they have been doing so far. So I like Florida a lot in these playoffs.
Yeah, and I think, they've been excellent and they've won both games, but Tampa's been stingy and been with them. I don't think Tampa's been necessarily like blown out by these guys. They've definitely been beaten. Don't get me wrong. They need Kucherov to start scoring goals. He has 2 assists, which is something, but like he's not been the dominant Kucherov he has been because Florida's defense is so good. But I don't think it's fair to say that Florida's like running away with this series just because they're up 2-0. Tampa's been playing well. They've been competitive.
I think that's fair. I mean, I think Florida just won the last one in OT, right? Or am I losing my
That's
mind?
right. Yeah.
So I mean, that's fair, totally, because you're 1 goal away from having it be a split series with Florida having home ice advantage. But I do think that like you picked up on something that's kind of the most important factor to this to me, which is seeing Kucherov kind of not have the success he had in the regular season, which he got kind of beat up online by Avs fans and among others who were kind of voting for McKinnon, as it sounds, basically saying, 5-on-5, he's not the same guy as he is with an advantage or when the net is empty. And I think like there's some credence to that so far based on what we've seen inside of the playoffs. We saw him get very frustrated against the Avs as well, but like the Avs didn't necessarily limit his opportunities. I mean, we saw Kemper make a huge save in Game 6 to seal the deal. So it's like he's going to get his shots. He's going to get his chances. But as long as the Panthers keep finding themselves on the positive side of these close games, like Jackie mentioned, they do seem to have a little bit of championship pedigree within that locker room. What do you think, Evan?
No, I agree with you, and that Florida series is one of several out east that are pretty good to watch because it's a good kind of rivalry that we've seen, right? Florida Tampa, Battle of Florida. Of course, you have Leafs Bruins. Rangers and Caps are kind of nowadays. And then why am I forgetting the last one? That is
yeah. I was going to say
very forgettable if you can't tell.
I've seen the most of that one for whatever reason.
Yeah.
Jackie loves watching the haters of the Islanders.
I know.
Oh, you had a good time then on their last one, with them blowing that.
I mean, that was crazy. But it's sort of interesting just because like Waugh and him leaning on Varley, which he's not doing tonight. But not necessarily on purpose. Like I said, that's just the one I think I've seen the most. Just coincidentally, I haven't really seen any of that Vancouver series because they're always on like the same day as ours. And so Carolina's on again tonight. I'll probably see some of that. So I don't know. I think Carolina's going to make quick work of them, but that's just kind of the one I've caught the most. And it's the one that's had the craziest comeback, I think. And I'm also going to say, has any, mentioning that Kucherov hasn't really got it going, has any star in the league really early on had like that amazing of a playoffs? I guess, Makar's 5 points is good, but
maybe Marchand.
I was going to.
Is there anyone else that's really?
Sure. Well, McDavid started out with 5 assists. His game 2 wasn't as good, but game 1, 5 assists. That was a pretty good start. Hyman had a hat trick. Pretty cool. That game 1, it looked like Edmonton was going to run the Kings, and then LA was good in game 2. But
I'm definitely rooting for LA. I want to see Edmonton go down.
I'd love it. I'd love to see LA beat Edmonton, and I actually think it'd be cool to see Nashville beat Vancouver too, because the Kings and Preds series would be pretty awesome if you ask me.
That would be something
Yeah.
for a second round, and then if someone going to the Western Conference Final out of that.
Exactly. Which, guys, this is the hardest trophy to win in sports for a reason. We've seen wild card teams win it. Which of all of the 2-0 series, I think probably the Vegas one and the Rangers and the Capitals would seem the most sure-handed so far. Would you guys agree with that?
Definitely.
Yeah, I definitely think Washington's not coming back. I'd say Carolina more than probably Vegas. I don't know. I feel like the Stars still might have a little bit of pushback left.
Well, in Matt Duchene news, Zach Parise just passed him in playoff points from a Colorado Avalanche, which is an absolutely crazy sentence to feel. I mean,
10 years ago, I would have hated that.
He said, but what?
Oh my gosh. 10 years ago, I would have just
So Duchene never scored a playoff goal for the Avs?
I don't know.
Is that basically what the stat is saying?
I think it is.
It has to be it.
Well, Duchene only played in, I think,
I think he was hurt for one
games?
series. I don't think he had that many games. I think he was hurt one year, wasn't he?
Mm-hmm. Well, I know that there was one year in particular, more than 1 year, that we just didn't make it at all. So I'm just, I just think it's hilarious that somebody who left the Colorado Avalanche, which I guess to his credit, this proves his point. He left to play meaningful hockey, but here we've been playing meaningful hockey pretty much since the day he left. But I just thought that stat was I read it and went, oh my God, what in the world is going on? Geez, is there a T in Skechers? That's what I felt like. It's just like we've gone into the freaking another ether. But let's talk about our bold predictions last week. And if you folks didn't catch it, go ahead, Ed.
I was just going to say, I'm following up on the Duchene talk. He played 8 career playoff games with the Avs, had 6 assists, and that was it.
That sounds about right.
6 in 2009, 2010, and then 2 in 2013, 2014. So
2 assists in that series.
3 assists in each series.
Dang,
or in each year.
If you show up in that Wild series with McKinnon, man, we might win that thing. And if Matt Cook doesn't go knee on knee with Tyson Barrie, we definitely win that thing.
Duchene didn't even register a shot in the 2013-14 series against the Wild.
Jeez, so Pete.
Wow.
Yikes.
I'm sorry, I digress.
Well, thank God we are where we are now, man. That's I'll take it any day. That's heading into game 2, I was like, the day after game 1 was tough. It was hard to cope, trying to figure out like what is it going to take for Georgiev to kind of shake the yips. And I think we saw him enact like kind of every strategy that you could. But I was just excited and felt like it was the time to be grateful, because I was looking back and thinking back on like the years where the Avs were not making the Stanley Cup playoffs. I'm looking around the league and looking at, a team like the Arizona Coyotes who are relocating. The Avalanche are a team that come from relocation. Like, it just kind of became real to me that, if the Avs don't win another game, they have only 3 left. So I took the grateful approach heading into game 2. And I think that my advice to fans is take that approach, because you're usually left kind of at the very least with the coping mechanism already in place. And then if they win, you're pleasantly surprised. So that's kind of what I went with. And then, speaking of being pleasantly surprised, my bold prediction was correct last week. So let's talk about last week's bold predictions. I will run that tape and we'll get into it.
It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for him.
I call that bold talk.
Before we move on, Peter Mann says, Duchene, is that song Somebody That I Used to Know? We moved on. Yes, we did.
That's a good way to put it, honestly. Yeah. Well done.
Yes.
Gautier Duchene.
Yeah, exactly. Gautier. That was the band I was looking for. But yeah, so bold predictions, what we do every week is we basically put something out into the universe and hope to the sweet heavens it comes true. And when it does, we earn a ding. And when it does not, we earn the classic buzzer. So I'll start with you, Jackie. You said, and these bold predictions were done before game 82. So, Jackie, you said Kovalenko would play in that game 82 and that Val Nichushkin would not. You were half right. No, you were totally wrong.
No, yeah.
You were totally
No,
wrong.
I'm done with the prospect optimism. That was the last stand.
Yes.
We're done with that now. So no more
And
optimism from here.
Jackie's back to normal.
Yes. And Evan, you're not allowed to make any bold predictions ever again because yours was that Jonathan Drouin would open the scoring in the playoffs, and my guy gets hurt in game 82, and we haven't seen him in the playoffs yet. So
yeah, that one's an ouch.
That one is like, if
literally.
I have no comments at this time.
If
Thank
I
you.
get out of womp, 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 after that one, I got to get that spot too. And then Ezra, you said that the Avs would win game 1 and game 2. They got kind of close. Jackie, what did you say earlier? You called it scoring tricks or something like that.
Score effects.
Score effects. I like that.
Yeah,
phrase.
that third period was a little score effects for me.
Yeah.
And the power play
I will
working,
say though, the first and second period weren't score effects, and they dominated those two. So I hear you.
I liked how they came out in game 1. I'll give them that, but after that, the whole game was just strange.
I got the scoring chances right in front of me. It was dumb. They were great.
I
see.
wouldn't give the team a gold star for that game.
No, certainly not. But as far as beating the Winnipeg Jets, they did do better than that.
Yeah, I'd say
They were
I'd
so
say-
close to that bold prediction. That would have been really good to come home 2-0, but alas.
Well, and my bold prediction was that if Anunin started game 82, he would give up 1 goal, and if Georgiev started, he'd get a shutout. So it's kind of a twofer, but I'll give myself the ding there with Anunin getting that 1 goal performance. I don't know if I was really going out on a limb with that one, considering Edmonton was icing what was basically an AHL squad. So that's kind of maybe that ding is kind of a sandbag or ding, excuse me. So let's move on to this week's bold predictions, and we'll go ladies first. Jackie, you ready?
Yes.
Let's do it.
All right. So my bold prediction is I think Georgiev starts every game in the rest of this series.
Love it. And can you elaborate as to why you feel that way?
I mean, yeah, I guess you could look at it as he plays well, so no reason to question it. But I also think when we were talking about Annunin earlier, the point about the team saying they were behind Georgiev and this and that, like, we'll never know if Annunin was available. Would he have started game 2? I say after that narrative, it's a no. And
Yeah.
I think you can't, after you put that narrative out there that we're so behind him and we believe in him and yada, yada, they're not taking him out of the net. I always felt like he's the guy, he's the starter. They're going to go down with the ship with him. I think if we ever see Annunin, it's maybe within a game. I think maybe he'd be willing to pull him if things start going downhill fast. But I don't think he's going to give Annunin a start. So I think, and I'll even extend that to the rest of however long their run is. I think Georgiev starts every single game, unless, of course, there's injury. But
yeah, I was going to say, yeah, if that happens, that's good for the Avalanche. Like if
that
play,
too.
Yeah.
Then he's playing well, but I also think he starts even if it
if
gets
he
a little
doesn't.
iffy again.
Yeah, we talked about. Go ahead, Ez. Sorry.
Well, I just think if Annunin had been healthy, he probably would have gotten game 2.
I don't think so.
I mean, Georgiev was he was historically bad. Let's
not after the whole we picked him up and he's our guy. Like I
No,
know
I hear
they
you.
have
I hear
to
you.
say that, but I just don't think they would have.
But I do think, regardless of all that, like now that he's shown he can bounce back from a historically bad performance,
that too.
he's not going to not get the net. He's not going to not get that chance. If he strings together a couple bad starts, I mean, it's hard.
Well, then they'll
it's
just
hard
be
to-
out.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was going to say. It's going to be hard to find time for Annunin to start, but he probably would, I think.
Okay. I like that, Jackie. That's a really good bold prediction, if you ask me, because I'm sure if you ask a certain population of Avalanche fans, they'd consider that very bold, given that.
Okay, for me, I don't feel like it's even that bold, but
I don't either, because I'm with you,
Yeah, I
and
don't
you've been tooting the horn about like they picked their guy, they're going with Gorgiev, they're going to go down with him, and I agree with you, and I also agree with you in terms of like the dialogue we heard after his victory about the teammates and stuff just kind of goes to speak for that, and in your favor. Like if they're losing with Gorgiev as the starter. If Annunen ends up playing, like it's not good news, and the only way it happens is in like a game 6 or a game 7. And it's like, do you really want to start your backup in an elimination game? That's not good.
That's why I
good.
think in game it's possible, but not as a start. So that's
Fair.
where I'm at.
All right. Well then, Evan, what is your bold prediction this week?
Yeah, I think we were talking about the stars earlier, right? And how none of them have really kind of popped up yet. I think it's time that an Avalanche star pops up. Nathan MacKinnon loves his home ice cooking for sure. And I'm going to say that he registers 5 points in the next 2 games.
I love it.
Nice. That would be helpful.
Yes, it would. Because if you ask me, if the Avalanche can keep the Jets under basically 2 goals, ideal 3, if you can't get the ideal, then I think they win. And if McKinnon gets 5 points in the next 2 games, that means either he's got 4 in one and 1 in the other, or pretty good split with 3 and 2. And then I think Avs win in those scenarios as well, hopefully. So I like that one. I like that one a lot. Ezra, what about you? What you got for me this week?
Well, I'm just gonna do it. The Avalanche win games 3 and 4. I wanted to change it up. I wanted to have a specific player prediction, but I just can't get that one out of my head. That's what I got to do.
Yeah, and you know what? It would be great to be heading back to Winnipeg for Game 5 with the potential opportunity to keep them there at home with all their white stuff. And
Do they win it in 5, or would they need to win it in 6?
Oh, excuse me, win it in 6. You're right. I'm sorry. So then they win it at home. That's pretty cool too. I'll take it, baby. I will take it. I will go kind of in the same direction as you, Evan, and I'm gonna pick up on somebody he's taken a few big hits. He seems like he's kind of fighting the stick a little bit. But my boy Mikko Rantanen, we're gonna see him not make Artturi Lekkonen's dad mad, because I'm sure Artturi Lekkonen's dad is mad right now again at Mikko Rantanen. But Mikko Rantanen is going to have, at minimum, a 2-goal performance in one of these next 2 games.
I almost went with Mikko for mine, but then I switched it up. It's a good one.
Yeah, I think Mikko's going to need a power play goal.
Yes. I think we see that. I think we see the Avs kind of take advantage of the power play with home ice. Because I feel like the Avs get a few more. I mean, I think every team gets a few more calls when they're on home ice in most sports, home whatever. You get a couple more calls, and I think the Avs right now just are pretty dangerous on the power play. With anytime you got Nichushkin on the power play, life is good. So this week we got Gorgiev starts every game in this series, and she doubled down on it. She said if they keep running, he's going to start every game in the playoffs. Evan says Nathan MacKinnon will register 5 points in the next 2 games. Ezra says the Avs will win games 3 and 4. And myself, I chose that Mikko Rantanen will have a 2-goal performance in one of the next 2 games. So that is our bold predictions for this week. I think that's kind of pretty much it for me. If you guys have anything else, is there anything you guys want to talk about?
Don't think so. I think I'll just say sorry for my late introduction. I totally slept through it. I think another show.
You didn't have to come clean on that. Nobody knew.
I promise.
Yeah,
I will
we
be
were just
much.
going to call you fashionably late.
I will be much more awake. But it's time tomorrow. Don't you worry. And I guess speaking of tomorrow, actually,
yes. Oh yeah.
We being myself and Adrian, will be coming to you all live from Ball Arena before the game to have ourselves a little live action show. There might be an opportunity to join in a live interview, perhaps a live crowd. So if you're headed to the game tomorrow, Keep an eye out on our social medias at Mile High Hockey and at MHH_lab for where to possibly meet us and hang out and talk Avs hockey before Game 3.
Yes, I love that. And folks, keep an eye out for Evan. He'll be walking around. We're gonna hit you with some questions, kind of get a beat on how Avs fans are feeling out in the lot before the game starts. And speaking of that, before we end the program, I do want to give a shout out to a couple of our users on the website. We got Delay of Game. He says his bold prediction is Avs in 6 or Peg in 5. The Avs have more personality, and also the play of AG is the biggest unknown. My fear is he's lets in goals early and often. The Avs get goalied. We also got bold prediction from. We got a fun one. Let me see here. Let's see. Oh, nope, that was the only one. So Delay a Game. Thank you so much for sending in your bold predictions. And folks, we're going to keep doing those follow-up articles to these episodes where you can contribute and submit your bold predictions, and we will read them live on the air. So thank you folks very much for watching. We got 340 live viewers right now, which is flipping awesome. We really appreciate you. Please head on over to Apple Podcasts and Spotify. You'll find our full catalog. This episode you're hearing right now will be available on those platforms tomorrow morning. And as we sign off, I do want to do one more thing and just say, we want to pay our respects to Bob Cole, a legendary NHL announcer who passed. If you guys didn't know, that's the gentleman who does the awesome Joe Sakic call that we use for our breakaway challenge. So that's how I want to end the show today. I want to end the show today with that call. So signing off from the Mile High Hockey Lab, thank you so much for tuning in. We'll see you next time. Go Avalanche.
The Breakaway Challenge.